Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I like that you brought up the aging component. There is a thing that happens, right, with our quote unquote senior horses. Our seniors tell us, right, when they decide to become seniors. And people
Mhm.
ask me all the time, what age is that? I'm like, well, what's their dentition like? There's more questions that we have to ask. And when they age is what I'm getting to. It's a process called inflammaging. And that
Mm.
literally just means that the bodily systems just start to slow down. Everything starts to slow down. Things don't work as well. And then when that happens, it causes, as you can imagine, a cascade of events that inflammation starts to kick up in the body if our things inside just aren't working well. So, yeah, I love that almost you mentioned that and that you're almost noticing that. It seems like a little bit in her. And there are some things that we can do to support that nutritionally too. So, based off of everything you said, I'm really excited to kind of go through her diet report together. So let me share my screen and we will start to dive into that. Okay, so we'll go through this together. Yes, this is a presentation, but I also want it to be a conversation. If you guys have any questions, I get on my roll, so feel free to stop me at any point and ask all of the questions. This can be very open-ended. So I always want to start with your goals. These goals, obviously, I captured all this data from Michelle. Please feel free to chime in if you have things that you want to add on to this. I'm happy to add anything into this as I can hit the escape button and edit this as we talk too. So our goals are digestive health and some muscle recovery. Seems like after we're riding, obviously, we want those muscles to be able to repair and bounce back, especially at her age. I think that's a great goal. Optimal weight, and BCS stands for body condition score. Hence the name of the business, BCS 5.0. That's ideally where we want most classes of horses to hang around. Whether we're talking about a racehorse or a stallion, those are the outliers that don't necessarily have to be a perfect five. But most classes of horses we want right at that five. And then obviously nutritionally balanced. That's why a lot of folks come to us. They want to make sure that the forage that they're feeding and see any of the nutrient gaps that it might not be supplying to the horse for their daily nutrient requirements. And then when we collected this data on the 5th, she weighed around 1172. That is with the weight tape method. There's two ways to wear, well, three ways technically to wear horses: a digital scale, which a lot of us are not fortunate enough to have a digital scale in our barn. And maybe you have one client out of, I can't tell you how many, that have a digital scale, so it's rare. And then we also have the weight tape method. That is a measurement of, if you guys can see my blue cursor here, her body length. So Michelle placed that tape right here in the center of her chest. She went upwards on an angle, and then she went around like the midpoint of that butt cheek right there. And then she got her body length measurement. And then she also got her heart girth measurement. That heart girth measurement times the body length. There's a formula that we use for the body weight to get her body weight in pounds. Okay, so that is how we calculated the 1172. It's pretty close. I will, just for fun, whip this out with my research-backed weight tape versus the weight tape method. It's usually within 10 to 15 pounds every time, so it's fairly accurate. And then her body condition score was around a 5.5. So, Michelle, I think you underscored her a little bit, and I kind of wanted to talk about this. That's okay, because it takes a ton of practice to know how to body condition score properly. You gotta touch and feel thousands and thousands of horses before we get really good at it. But where I kind of pushed her a little bit over on the five was she had some tailhead fat deposits when it looked like you did your 360 video that I saw. And then I can kind of see them here too in the rear shot as well. And then her shoulder is okay. The areas that I'm really looking at for fat are the tailhead, the shoulder, and the neck. Okay, so areas of regional adiposity, we call those. So just a little spongy there, but nothing to be concerned about. Um, Good rule of thumb is when we body condition score is if you can take a step back and you can see a faint outline on Miss Maxine, whether she inhales, exhales, takes a step, anything like that, she can't quite be a five. And by looking at her, I don't see a faint outline of rib, so she's okay to be at a five or above. Okay. So her body condition scoring was as such. We did note her nutritional issues of colic. So it sounds like she's had 2 episodes in the last 2 years or so, year and a half, somewhere in there. I actually frequently see, and I hate to say this, a lot of colic cases come to us, and we collaborate with veterinarians frequently on this. Um, Most of the time, our colics are happening from a rapid forage change. And a lot of horse owners don't actually know or that they're aware, and we can't do better if we don't know, right? Is that when the forage changes too rapidly, whether we go from one load to another load, and that cutting is different, or the field is different, or the species is different, right? There's lots of variables in hay. Horses are up to 10 times more likely to colic from a rapid forage change. It's just so common, unfortunately, for horses to colic from that reason, along with the dehydration piece. I had 3 horses that I worked with in Southern Ohio that they stopped drinking, and that was for a whole bunch of reasons, but come to find out their electrolytes were imbalanced. And when sodium chloride, potassium, magnesium are imbalanced, that doesn't trigger the thirst response in the horse, hence becoming dehydrated, right? So there's a couple different reasons why chronic colic or a couple colic episodes can happen. And that's why I ask more questions. If there's anything I can do nutritionally to help that in the future, that's why I always ask. Um, Moving on, though, we also noted her workload is moderate. Moderate's about 3 to 5 hours a week. These are broken down into certain percentages of walk, trot, and canter, of course. And I believe we captured that workload currently to be moderate. Why is this important? Because workload or nutrient requirements vary greatly on our horse's workload, right? If you're being worked more, your nutrient requirements go up, and then vice versa. So let's advance forward to the famous bar graph slides that everybody likes to see when they work with BCS. We want to see where our horses are deficient, if they have any deficiencies, and how I can help you fix them. So everything that we were feeding is up here in this table in the top. And what I'm looking at is the hay test that I have punched in, Michelle, that you shipped me, was the alfalfa. I believe it was an alfalfa grass mix. We called it alfalfa hay. When I looked at it, it looked like it had some grass in it. Timothy hay, your Triple Crown Senior that she's on, and then also the Summer Games electrolyte. So that is all what you see down here for her nutrients. So don't look at this and panic and be like, oh my God, there's red bars. Maxine is doing okay. She is just fine. I promise you that. These are all very common deficiencies, honestly, that we see, and very, very fixable. Okay, so don't panic. Phosphorus, copper, zinc, selenium, manganese, iodine came back as deficient. Chloride is an electrolyte that I mentioned earlier. Vitamin E and B1. So if you look to the graph on the right, this is still balanced at a moderate workload. This is what happens to the bar graph when I put her on the diet and the plan that I recommend, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Okay, you can see that everything, I just can't squeeze it all into one slide, so it kind of stays here. You'll see that everything is green and balanced and pretty. Okay, so that takes care of the nutrients. If you take your eyeballs now down to the bottom of this slide, if I pull this up, this bar comes up, so I hope you guys can read it. It should go away. That says non-structural carbohydrate. And this is a measure of starch and sugar in the diet. How many times have we all heard the term NSC? There was like this whole buzzword in the equine industry however many years ago. Everybody was scared to death of NSCs. NSCs are not a bad thing unless your horse is metabolic or has a problem metabolizing starch and sugar properly. Currently, right now in the diet, she's 13.6%. What does this mean? If Maxine, let's say, knock on wood, she were ever to become insulin resistance, EMS, equine metabolic syndrome, or maybe even Cushing's, PPID, with insulin resistance, this number would need to be 10 to 11% or below. Okay, right now she's at 13.6, but you guys did not present to me that she has any kind of nutritional issues that I would need to know about. So this number at 13.6 is technically at a safe level for her, for carbohydrates, currently in the diet. You'll see in my after diet, I actually did pull her down a little bit for NSCs, which I prefer at a horse of her age. When systems start to slow down, things don't start to work as well. We want to start to become preventative, as preventative as possible, so you don't have those vet bills, knock on wood, later on down the road for coming up, to be either Cushing's with insulin resistance or something along those lines. So that's why nutrition, I'm not biased, I swear, right? That's why I think it's great because it can be a preventative maintenance tool to set her up for health as she does get older, right? So let's advance. So we're going to advance the slide. I don't want this slide to overwhelm you guys, okay? We are just going to have a conversation of the products that I would like to use and think about using to be supportive for Maxine to get these bar graphs or get this bar graph right here on the right to get her balanced, okay? At the end, I do have a feeding scheduled for you broken out AM, daily, PM, so you can print that sucker out. Michelle, take it to the barn with you, whatever, or take it to the feeder or whatever you guys want to do. It's just handy little sheet to have. So let's talk about this slide here. I promise this is not as overwhelming as it looks, okay? I'll just talk you through it. So I do want to keep her on her Triple Crown Senior. I think if it's not broke, we're not going to fix it, okay? So, and I very much love that about what we do is that if you're using something and it's working, we actually don't have to change it. But what I can do is bring balance to the diet with what you're already using. So I think the Triple Crown Senior is great. You see that she had some vitamin and mineral deficiencies though in the slide before. I think to bring balance to the diet, I want to bring in a product called Pro Balance pellets. Mind you, I have links at the end. I earn $0 on those links. They're for sheer convenience for you to click on and read more about the products. This product is made by Bluebonnet. Here's why I like this product. One, I personally use this product for that little fat halflinger that you see right there in the back. It's nice because it doesn't supply excess protein, calories, or carbohydrates to the diet. It's a nice, clean balancer pellet that is just going to supply and fill in those gaps for those vitamins and minerals that she was simply deficient in, okay? And 50 grams a day is really dang efficient way to get her vitamins and minerals in. I mean, you guys will see when you get this product, it's a tiny amount a day. And that's going to help bring those vitamins and minerals up that she's deficient in. You're probably thinking, okay, Rachel, great. Why don't you increase the Triple Crown Senior just to meet her vitamin and mineral requirements? I would probably do that or consider that if Maxine was underweight or under body condition. I would have increased the Triple Crown Senior to help better meet her nutrient requirements, but I didn't because I don't really think she needs a whole ton of weight and body condition personally from the photos and the videos that we got back. So this, like I said, will help bring balance to the diet for vitamins and minerals without supplying excess, okay? Moving into the forage, are you guys still okay? Are you still with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Moving into the forage is what I would love to do, and we'll have to have a conversation about this. I don't really know the whole situation when it comes to the forage or how that works at your barn, or what they have set up, but I would probably like to, since she has colicked in the past, and we had the conversation earlier about just keeping consistent forage in one type, I would probably go forward with just that alfalfa grass hay test that we have, Michelle. I think we labeled that as the alfalfa. Like I said, one hay type is preferred to help prevent that colic and to reduce those colic events if we can. The reason why I chose the alfalfa grass hay is for Maxine, it truly is the best fit based off of everything else you're doing in the diet. Okay, and that's what we do here at BCS is we balance the horse's diet according to the forage test and we fill in those nutrient gaps according to that. Can I use both hay types? Yeah, I mean, I use two hay types often in diet reports. But those are also horses that don't seem to struggle or they're on consistent hay and they're used to both those hay types. They're not chronic colickers or anything like that. My recommendation is just because with the colic that she's had in the past, I am sticking to the one hay that I liked between the two hay types that I think would be a good fit for her. So that is why I recommended that one. So every horse owner can do this daily forage requirement calculation. It's 2% of her body weight. So in a calculator that looks like 0.02 times her body weight of 1172 pounds. I need to stick in an L there. I just caught that error. That would give you 23.44 pounds of forage daily is what she requires in a day. Okay, so that is her minimum 2% of her body weight forage requirement. On this plan that we have her on, she's meeting her daily forage requirement. She's actually over just a hair, over 2%, just a hair, which is ideal and right about where I want her. Okay. Now, moving into the functional and supportive products that I want to talk about that are research backed that I think can be really beneficial for her, based off of some of the symptoms and things that we have going on. I actually have research articles for you at the end in one of these slides for all of these products I'm going to recommend that you can click on. You can read more of the research articles, all of that. But Outlast was specifically tested against other competitors in the market, and Platinum was actually one of them. And Outlast, not only was it cheaper on a cost per day basis, but it saved in terms of, or I'm sorry, it acted faster and longer than other products on the market too in the gastric environment. So when you start feeding Outlast, it only takes 2 minutes to start working and buffering the gastric environment. What does that mean? When we look at Outlast under a microscope, it looks kind of like a dish sponge, like kind of porous. And the horse's acidity of the stomach likes to hang around a 1 or a 2. Outlast likes to kind of work in that porous kind of fashion and soak up that acidity and buffer it to about a 3 or a 4. And one serving is going to keep that 3 to a 4 buffer environment for about 4 hours. If I had to choose to feed Outlast based off of a certain time frame, okay, here's how I would personally use Outlast is first serving would definitely be Michelle before you ride her. Whenever she undergoes a stressful case or wherever, whatever you're going to do with her, feed Outlast about, 5 minutes, whatever, when you're tacking her up. Definitely give her a serving of Outlast then. You're certainly, I don't think, going to be riding her for 4 hours, maybe an hour at the most. So that's going to give her enough of that gastric buffer time during that stressful event. That would be recommendation number one. Number two would, so that would probably be earlier in the day, maybe later in the afternoon, something like that. My second recommendation, if I had to choose for her second serving, would be do your best on this, but somewhere around her dinner time. Whenever they feed her, if they can throw in the Outlast too, that would give her that other 4 hours of buffering into the night. That would be my recommendation with the 2 servings if I had to choose. Also, with that being said, it might be a little bit of an education piece with the barn if you're able to. I don't know if you already do this, but um, double hay net, maybe have like a double hay net that they use for the PM feeding that they can stuff full overnight. Force her to kind of pick at it pretty slowly if it's double netted and make it an ultra slow feed net. So she actually has something to work on overnight that lasts a while because, yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm not going to go out to the barn, certainly for my horse at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning, just to make sure she has enough hay because I'm sleeping at that time, right? So I wouldn't expect you to do that either, but that would be my recommendation is probably an ultra slow feed net. Maybe that's like her designated PM feed net. You can even double net it to slow her down, but just make sure that they stuff it before they leave for the night. And you can kind of assess, like, is this working? Go out there the next day, Michelle, check it out. Like, is there anything left or is she cleaning that up? And then you and I can kind of work together on a solution if we need her hay to extend even longer. That would be my recommendation. And then just really truly assess, like, how long is this lasting her? Do we need to pivot? What else can we do to get her hay to last? Yeah, because 12 hours is a long time and do not recommend that. And not only that, it can cause an increased risk for gastric ulcers. And if our horses do have ulcers, that can actually be another cause for them to colic as well. If they have ulcers going on, that's actually a symptom. It's kind of a hidden symptom, but it can be a symptom if our horses have ulcers. They can show it through colic as well. Okay, great question. So that would cover your Outlast. Would certainly recommend that one. This next one I'm going to talk about takes me back to the inflammaging a little bit that we talked about in the beginning. She's getting older, systems are slowing down. Not only that, if she has a little bit of a dull skin, dull coat, she has some weird patches, anything like that going on with her hair, joint, as she gets older. This next product is called Omega Match. Omega Match is actually a plant-based ahi flower oil. And this would just go on top of the feed, however you guys do it. Just drizzle it on top of the feed. And flower oil is really unique. It has a really unique fatty acid profile as compared to others on the market, like our corn oil, our flax oils, and anything else you see out there marketed for an oil. Flower oil is not only unique in that sense, but it will give you the most bang for your buck for omega-3 to 6 to 9 ratio. Okay. Others you see out there are either inverted, they're imbalanced, and you're not really getting the most bang for your buck out of those omegas. So, Omega Match also, research shows that horses prefer the taste of ahi flower oil over others on the market too, like our fish and our flax and all those other things as well. So it's kind of a win-win-win-win-win supplement, is what I'm trying to say. And I do think it can really help with the inflammation and such that we might be thinking is going on the inside, to help support her from that standpoint as well. I will say this one is not cheap. This is not a cheap supplement, and I'm going to be honest with you about that. But I'm going to be honest with you about that because you're not going to find, and this is part of what I do, is making sure that you guys are using products that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. Because listen, I have a horse, and I'm certainly not going to be feeding something that's not going to work to her. There's nothing else out there on the market with the potency of omegas in it like this one. And then your omega match is actually for your omegas, right? It's going to help skin, coat, immune, like I said, joint, muscle. This one's cool too, actually, because Michelle, you said that you wanted something for muscle recovery. This actually gets into the muscle cell and helps it repair and recover, which is really cool. This product, like, I geek out over the research on it because it has really good research on it. I love this product. One thing you should know about me is I do not put products in my diet reports that do not pass a test called RIDE, just like how we would ride our horses, RIDE. They have to have research, they have to have quality ingredients, and a dose that's effective for your horse. And as a horse owner, if I wouldn't feed it to my horse because it doesn't pass those criteria, I certainly would not put it in your report and say, yeehaw, go feed it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my philosophy on supportive functional supplements that go in my diet reports. With that being said, I don't like to jam pack the diet reports with supplements either, only ones that really are proven to work. So that covers the Omega Match. That's just going to be started at 30 milliliters a day, which actually is a pretty small amount. We could taper that up or down as needed, but I think we can start there and see how she does with it. Now, fecal score. Let's talk about fecal scoring a little bit. Michelle, I think you had sent me some poop pictures of her. We scored her poop together. We talked about that. I have a fecal scoring guide that I would love to send you if you ever would like to know what your horse's poop score is like. Kind of a weird thing, but something we do in nutrition is look at horse poop all the time. It gives me a good snapshot of what's going on in the hindgut. Are we healthy? Do we need attention? What's the microbiome doing back there? How can I support it? Michelle sent me some pictures. It did score a little bit lower on the fecal score scale, Michelle. I think I was somewhere around a 2, maybe, in there. And ideally, we want it as a 3 to a 4 out of 5. It goes from 0 to 5, yeah. But 3 to a 4 is good. We want to be in that. So she's just a tick low. So she has, based off the pictures, some balls forming, but they're kind of loose. So like when they hit the ground, they don't cow patty, but they're just loose. What we're looking for is nice, firm, round balls with a shine to them. Because if they have a shine to them, that tells me that she's hydrated, she's drinking enough, the electrolytes are in balance, all of the things. So this next product is what I'm getting to. It's a research-proven probiotic that not only survives the pelleted process in manufacturing, but it also is a particular probiotic strain to help improve the fecal score. I have lots and lots of testimonies for this product that it actually works. I've started with horses with fecal scores of 0s to 1, totally gross, watery diarrhea, and then improved it by just using this product and some other balanced nutrition things. This really helps. So love this product to help support her hindgut environment, okay? The outlast is going to support the foregut. So a horse is broken into two parts. We have the foregut and we have the hindgut. Outlast is going to pay attention to the foregut. Systemic probiotic is going to focus on that hindgut. And I think it's probably important to support both with her, given all the history and everything you guys told me about the colic and her aging and this, that, and the other. I do think supporting her entire digestive tract is going to be a really great thing for Miss Maxine.
I have a question just like in general because this is like a lot.
Yeah,
Um, do you want us to add everything in all at once? Do we slowly integrate one thing at a time? Like, because
good question.
we don't want to overwhelm her and her body just be like, oh my God, this is so much to do.
Yep, absolutely good question. Hold that thought, and I promised I'm getting there at the
Okay.
end. We'll talk about how to transition a horse slowly. That is on this presentation. Yes, we're just kind of talking about everything now, and then we'll do hay testing, and then yeah, we'll go into that. Yep. Okay. So salt. All horses have a daily salt requirement of 1 to 2 ounces a day. I love to start all of my clients on, it sounds bougie, but on a salt buffet. This is the cheapest thing you're going to do for this horse, I promise. You're going to go to Tractor Supply or wherever it is near you in California, your local feed store. You're going to go get a plain white salt brick. It's like, those little white salt bricks, 99% NaCl. Okay. You're going to get a Himalayan salt rock and you're going to get a Redmond rock on a rope. I like to do a salt buffet, and maybe you've tried these things in the past. I would just encourage you, maybe let's just try it again. Let's put all three forms of salt in her stall. And then, Michelle, I'll put it on you as your little homework of like, here's her salt buffet. Take notes maybe once a week. Here's what she's licking. Here's what she's ignoring. She's a fan of this one, fan of that one. Then, if you notice here in your diet report, I put all three of them in here and they're at a very tiny amount, like zero 0.1 a day. Okay, that's like nothing. I just put them in there to just register, hey, we're using this. Once you'd better tell me at her 30-day check-in, she loves this, she hates this. I can go back in her diet report and like retweak these amounts to what I think she's actually getting through licking. And then we can come back to we need to add salt into her feed or not to balance out that chloride requirement that she was actually deficient in. So, I mean, my thing is if it's not palatable, if she's not loving the Summer Games electrolytes, I would probably say maybe discontinue that and just go with plain white table salt. Now, with that being said, horses have an upper threshold for salt in the diet. We know that for sure when we add salt to a diet plan, it drives down palatability. I have clients where I can feed them 3 to 4 tablespoons of white Morton salt and they lick their feed pan and they don't even know what's in there. I have other clients where if I literally add a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, they're like middle hoof, I am not eating. They will not eat any of their food. So, with that being said, I tell my clients if we put them on salt, which she was deficient in chloride, so she definitely needs something, and I have lots of tricks up my sleeve to get salt into her. Don't you worry about that. We'll make sure her electrolytes are balanced. But if we add salt and you're like, oh, she's backing off a feed, she's not eating, great. You tell me right away, you pull the salt out right away, and then we'll pivot to a product that I know for sure she's going to love and go feral for and all of the things, okay? And so Outlast, if you decide to move forward with the Outlast, which I highly recommend, has a calcium derived seaweed in it, and that's what makes the buffering components in it so effective and works so well. Because the seaweed is in there, seaweed is extremely high in iodine. You technically, if you're feeding a product like Outlast or a supplement with this type of marine derived, calcium derived seaweed in it, and it's in an effective dose, I wouldn't recommend using iodized table salt because she already has plenty of iodine in the diet, right? So if you go back to her bar graph, iodine with uniodized salt in there, and the Outlast is well over where she needs to be at 166. Still is a very safe level, but this is without, I'm sorry, yeah, without the iodized salt. So uniodized salt in there plus the Outlast, and she's still balanced. Okay. So that would be my recommendation on the salt. Let's work really closely together if we decide to make transitions, changes as to she loves the salt, she doesn't mind it, or she hates it, then I'm going to be like, great, we'll pivot, we'll get salt into her one way or another. Okay. Okay, so just three important diet components I want to touch on. We already talked about her NSCs. On this plan we just discussed, she's at 13% total in the diet. It is above the 11%, but she's not metabolic. She doesn't have any kind of testing or diagnosis that tells me she needs to be below 10 to 11%. We did increase her calories in the after diet a little bit, but nothing I would say that would cause for concern. And her protein is increasing at an optimal level now as well. Now, we're going to go into the hay testing. So, we're going to talk about how we test the hay. In nutrition, we test the hay on the quality standard scale. These reference sheets will be in this diet report for you guys to always refer to. Okay, so you don't have to like memorize any of this. You can check this out too later. But the quality standard scale is a rating of prime to 5. Prime being basically your dairy quality alfalfa hay. 5 being your very poor quality, indigestible. It's hard for those gut bugs to get anything out of it. Ideally, we want most classes of hay to fall right between that 1 and a 4 on the quality standard scale, whether that's an alfalfa, a grass, or maybe a mixture of the both. Okay? That's how we rate. Now, this on the right, I call bedtime reading material. If you're a nerd like me, you'll love to read this later on before you go to bed. But if you don't care about this stuff, it might put you to sleep. Basically, this is just saying the typical range values that I'm looking for on a hay test, where I want them to fall based off of that nutrient I'm looking at. Okay? So we'll go back to your hay test. So we'll start with the Timothy. Like I mentioned earlier, Timothy is a grass hay. It rated as a 3 to a 4 on the quality standard scale. So it's what we would rate as an excellent to a good quality grass hay with a high caloric content. What does that mean? It is appropriate for most classes of horses, but as we all already know, hay alone is not going to supply everything they need in the diet. That's why you guys are here, to get her balanced according to the hay test, right? So the calories in it are 1010 kcals per pound. Here's where I found that. I'm looking at the digestible energy, and if I scroll over to the dry matter column, dry matter is what we're looking at on a hay test because these are the values that actually mean something in a horse. So you can kind of ignore the as sample column, but the dry matter for the digestible energy, which is calories, if I move the decimal over 3 places, that gives me 1010 kcals per pound out of the hay, which makes it into English for you to understand. Okay. Now, the NSC, non-structural carbohydrates, is a measure, if you guys look over. So the WSC is the water-soluble carbohydrates plus the starch, okay? So if I look at that, 14.9 plus 0.7, if you do my math, double check me, 15.6% NSC. I did say it was elevated because it is technically above that 11% for NSC. 11% or below would be within range, not elevated. 11% or above is elevated. With that being said, we'll keep in mind when we talk about the alfalfa next, this is kind of why I made the decision that I did to put her on the next hay test rather than this one. I'm being, will she not be okay on this hay? I shouldn't say that, no, because if she's been eating it, she's probably fine. But if I had to make a decision for preventative maintenance for her health, I would say, yeah, let's pick the one that's lesser in carbohydrates for future planning, right? So the 15.6 elevated is what I noted there. The fiber is digestible, which is good news. What am I looking at for that? Neutral detergent fiber is what I'm looking at there. It came back as 61.9, so let's say 62. When this number starts to get 65% or above, that signals to me that the hay is starting to become indigestible to the horse, where the hind gut bugs are just going to struggle to kind of break this down a little bit more. So this coming back as a 62, it's still within that range. It's digestible. Last but not least, I want to point out my personal most favorite value on a hay test, and that is RFV, that value way at the bottom. That stands for relative feed value. This is a measure of the palatability. So what does this hay taste like to Maxine? And the digestibility of the hay. For this type of species, I certainly want this number to be 80 or above, and it came back as 89. So it's tasty to her more than likely, and it's digestible, okay? Everything else on the hay test, when I look at it, calcium to phosphorus is balanced. Your iron is another cause of concern for horse hunters. It came back as 92 parts per million. It's not elevated. 250 parts per million or above would be elevated. It's 92, so you're good to go there. Um, Nothing else really stood out to me as crazy, crazy, crazy or out of the blue. Okay. So the alfalfa, what I labeled is the alfalfa grass hay. This one came back as a 3 to a 4. It's a good to a moderate quality alfalfa grass hay with a moderate caloric content. This one came back a little bit lower in NSE at 15.1%. Still elevated, but better than the 15.8 in my opinion when we're talking about carbohydrates. Once again, that's water soluble carbohydrates plus starch, so the 14.6 plus the zero point 0.5, okay? This one, calories came back a tick lower too at 990, and the fiber was 61.5, so still digestible. RFV 89, iron is fine at 73. So as you can see, for Maxine, if I had to pick one hay type for her, which I prefer due to the colic and we want to prevent all of that in the future, this is the one that I went with as the best fit because of how the hay test came back for her. So, like, when we look at our horses as an individual, it's really important to get down to this data right here because this is the majority of the diet is the forage. If we're not looking at and analyzing this first, yeah, I talked about supplements first and I talked about feed first, but this is actually what matters the most for what we decide. I mean, people ask me all the time, what do I feed my horse? Is this a good supplement? Blah, blah. I'm like, personally, if we want to be honest, I want to see your hay test. That is what I want to see first, and then we'll talk about feed and supplements after that because this is what matters the most for our horses. So you can tell I'm very passionate about testing the hay. So here is her feeding schedule. As such, as promised, here's how I would lay it out. If you're able to, it sounds like the barn feeds, like if we had to make up baggies or however you guys prep the feed, here's how I would do it. Now, I will say the Pro Balance pellets, I put in here scoop because the big bag, there's two ways to order this Pro Balance. You can get the 12.5 pound bucket. It looks like a supplement bucket and it fits really nicely in the feed room. Or you can get a big 40, 50 pound bag of it and order it like once a year, which is efficient feeding. But the small bucket that you're probably going to order doesn't come with the scoop. Riddle me that. But the big bag comes with the scoop. So I put the scoop in here in case you get the big bag. It already comes with the included scoop. If not, I highly recommend getting a gram scale or some kind of gram scale to weigh out these tiny little 25 grams of Pro Balance that you need. The senior, it sounds like you guys probably, if you've been feeding that, have a system on how to get that figured out for 3 pounds a day. Outlast, once again, I would do a gram scale again for that, 200 grams. I put in the AM, but just know that that Outlast can switch over here to the daily, meaning if you want to give it to her, Michelle, before you ride, it's very flexible. So you can bump this AM 200 grams over here to the daily before you ride her if you want to do that. And then leave this 200 grams in the PM before, for her PM feed. I would start here personally with the white salt. If you can sneak in a half a tablespoon of white salt into this ration here, wonderful. We'll start there. If you feel like we can bump this up to 1 full tablespoon after she's been eating a little bit, we'll do that over time, but we're not in a rush to get there, okay, with the salt.
Mhm.
Omega
Um,
Match, 30 milliliters, like I said, it's not very much. I would just give that all to her in one feeding. You don't need to split it like 15-15. That's really silly. And then just do the systemic at night.
So I just have like a little like concern. So pretty much we do the scoops and everything when we see her once a day and the barn does the hay. So would it be possible to combine like AM PM and just make it a daily while the hay will be like AM PM?
Is she fed one time a day? Is that what it sounds like?
Yeah. The grain portion, yeah.
The
Hmm.
grain is okay. So she gets her 3 pounds of senior, and she would get her Pro Balance in one feeding and her salt and
Yeah. Mhm.
systemic and her. Yeah, you could. I mean, there's nothing. If this whole ration was 6 to 8 pounds or more, I would say nope, we need to split it because that's too much, but it's not that much.
Mhm.
So I can switch this before I email it. I'll just put those things into the daily column and then put the hay AM and PM. Excuse me, if that's what you're asking, yes, I can certainly adjust that
Yeah.
feeding schedule to match what you guys do. Yep.
Yeah. And then you could even clarify like before the ride and after the ride type of things if you want to split things after as well.
I think I'm going to do this right now with you sitting right here so we do this right together. So this all goes in daily. The hay is going to get moved over, right? But it's also going to be split. So I want her to have 25, so that would be 12 and a half here. And then I need your systemic moved over. And then we will delete this. And then that. And then I will color code these again before I send in a promise. 25 divided by 3, then she would get about 8.5 pounds per feeding of each. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Which I think each bale was about 8.5 pounds.
Each flake, yes.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
That's good. It's nice and dense.
Hmm.
Only bad thing about that is just make sure that it's lasting. Like she's not going more than 4 to 5 hours would be my recommendation without hay. So whether you have to like double net that, like I said, ultra slow feed net it, something to make sure that she's working on that slowly over time. How does that look better?
Yeah, that looks
Mhm.
more
Work,
attainable.
work up slowly to the salt. I put a note there. And then the outlast, you can do 1 serving before riding. So going forward now, Michelle, back to your question, okay? How to properly switch the diet over. Good news is we are not going from one grain to another grain. So you don't need to be this intense about using the old and the new because there is no old, right? So you're just bringing in the new. So this is going to apply to just new. So you're going to do 75, or I'm sorry, 25% of the new, whatever it is, for 3 days. And no, you don't have to bring in one, two, three product every couple weeks. You can start them all at the same time. That's okay. Unless you suspect that if you start something and she's going to have an issue, right? So maybe if you want to hold off on the oil, we'll do the oil at the end because oil can sometimes cause loose stool. And we want to figure out that if she does get a poor fecal score, then yes, we would blame the oil, right? So you could probably start the Outlast and the Systemic right away. I would do those for 3 days at 25% of the recommended amount. Okay, and you hold her there for 3 days. Then for 3 days, you're going to hold her at 50% of the recommended amount. Then for the next 3 days, it's 3, 6, day 9. By day 9, she's fully switched over to the products. Okay, that's probably how I recommend it. With oil, you don't have to be that intense. You don't have to take 9 days. Maybe you take 4 or 5 because the amount is so small. Okay. That is how I would slowly transition her over to the new stuff. These are just notes. Honestly, everything we already talked about, it puts it into words for you guys later so you can read through those. And then there's those links. So click on these, check them out. Here's the bucket of the Pro Balance I was talking about. There's the bag. You can only get this one online. I don't think they have this in stores in California. I think the only stores they have it in is in Florida. So I would click and order this one online. If you want, there is a taste test on there for the Bluebonnet Pro Balance in a tiny bag for $5. If you guys want to start with a taste test of the Pro Balance, go for it. Order that first. The probiotic, the Omega Match, and the Outlast, you can all get at your feed store. I would just call them before you go there and say, hey, do you have these products before you drive there? There's nothing more frustrating than going there and they don't have it, right? Make sure that they have those for you. Here's those research reviews. Please feel free to click on these later for the systemic. the Outlast, and the oil, and read through those later. This is just more information on our package going forward to stay on our team for a year. We do have a merchandise store if you guys needed a scale, blah, 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 whatever, we have it all there. Um, Questions for me? That is the gist of the diet report. I'm going to hit stop share so I can see you a little bit better.